Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Tonight's story is unlike anything you've heard. She walked in wearing the green dress I told her once made her look like spring. He held the door for her. She laughed. She hadn't laughed like that in months, not around me at least. From my seat at the corner table, behind a poorly pruned ficus, I saw everything. She didn't know I'd arrived early. She didn't know I'd already paid for the wine. She didn't know I'd been sitting there for 18 minutes, rehearsing in my head how to give her the letter I spent all night writing. But none of that mattered anymore, because Lorna was on a date. Not with me. She was sitting 2 tables over with a man I didn't recognize. Tall, confident, that effortless type. The kind of man who probably didn't need 4 attempts to get his tie right. He leaned in. She smiled at him like he was the secret she'd been dying to tell. And I just sat there, frozen, watching the woman I spent 10 years loving flirt with someone like I never existed. Like I wasn't the one who clipped her mother's roses when she was sick. Like I wasn't the one who drove across town in a thunderstorm to bring her forgotten laptop. Like I hadn't spent the past week crafting a letter for her, by hand, to remind her why we still mattered. That letter was in my jacket pocket. 5 pages of memories, little jokes, awkward drawings in the margins, and exactly 3 sentences that took me 2 hours to write. But I didn't give it to her. Not yet. First, I watched. She played with her necklace, the one I gave her on our 2nd anniversary. She told him she liked his cologne. She giggled when he said something about her eyes. She said, "I don't usually do this." And he replied, "Neither do I." Classic. And then she kissed him. Not long, not passionate, but enough. Enough to end everything. I stood up, walked over, placed the folded letter on their table. Her face went pale, like someone flipped a switch inside her. She looked up, lips parted. Not a word came out, and I didn't wait for one. I walked out, past the wine I'd ordered, past the table I reserved, past the last 10 years of my life. That's how our anniversary ended. Not with candles, not with a toast, but with a letter she never expected, and a silence she'll never forget. I didn't go far. Just around the corner from the restaurant, there's this old parking structure nobody uses after dark. I sat there for over an hour with the engine off and my hands still shaking. My chest felt hollow, like I'd handed her the last thing inside me, and now there was nothing left. I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror, wondering what kind of man writes a 5-page letter to his wife while she's out rehearsing a new love story. I know what people will say. I should have confronted her, demanded answers, yelled, maybe even caused a scene. But I didn't have it in me. I wasn't angry. Not in that moment. I was just tired. Tired of being the one who always tried. Tired of hearing, "I'm just tired," from her, while she had enough energy to flirt over fettuccine with someone who wasn't me. You might be wondering what I wrote in that letter. I guess it doesn't matter now. But I'll tell you anyway because it was supposed to be a beginning, not an end. I wrote about the first time we met, how she spilled coffee on my shirt and I joked it was the best thing that happened to that boring button-down. I reminded her how we used to race to brush our teeth at the same time just to see who'd get the good sink. I told her I missed her. Not just her presence, but her. The way she used to rest her chin on my shoulder when we watched TV. The way she used to whisper my name like it meant something. I didn't write it to fix things. I wrote it because I believed there was still something worth saving. Turns out I was the only one still fighting. She didn't call that night. Didn't text. Didn't even send a half-baked excuse. By the time I drove back to the house, it was nearly midnight. All the lights were off except the one in the hallway. The one she always left on when she was waiting up for me. Except this time, she wasn't waiting. Her car was in the driveway, but she was already in bed. Or pretending to be. The letter wasn't in the trash. Wasn't on the counter. Wasn't on the nightstand. She had read it. I know that because I found it neatly folded back in the envelope I used, sitting on the coffee table like a receipt for a failed marriage. No tears on the pages. No note scribbled on the back. Nothing. Just silence. And that silence said more than any apology ever could. So I sat there, alone, on the couch, staring at the envelope like maybe it would explode or unravel or offer a clue I missed. I was still in my anniversary clothes, still smelling like the cologne she once said made me smell safe. And that's when it hit me, safe was never enough for her. She didn't want safe. She wanted exciting, dangerous, temporary. That's what he was. That man at the restaurant. A risk, a thrill. Something I stopped being the moment I started caring too much. And maybe that's the cruelest part. That I loved her so loudly, while she quietly stopped loving me back. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. I heard the familiar sounds. The bathroom faucet running, the cabinet door creaking, her humming some mindless tune while brushing her hair. It was like I had imagined the whole thing. Like the restaurant, the wine, the other man, my letter. None of it existed in her version of reality. I stood in the kitchen, staring at my half-burnt toast, wondering if maybe I really was losing my mind. She walked in wearing her favorite gray sweater, the one I gave her for Christmas 2 years ago, smiled faintly, and asked if I wanted coffee. I didn't respond. Couldn't. My throat was dry, not from sadness anymore, but from disbelief. How do you just carry on like nothing shattered? Like we're still the same couple who once built pillow forts and danced to vinyl records? I watched her move around the kitchen with the same ease she always had, except now I knew that every movement was a performance. Polished, rehearsed. I left the house that morning before she could ask questions. I didn't trust myself to lie with the same grace she did. I drove with no destination, past intersections I didn't recognize, through neighborhoods that didn't belong to me. At some point, I ended up near the pier. It was quiet, gray, and slightly foggy, the kind of weather that matched how my insides felt. I sat on a bench and opened my phone. No messages from her. No missed calls. Not even a "where are you?" I went back and reread old texts from her. Back when she still called me babe, and sent photos of her lunch with captions like, "Wish you were here." Those messages felt like relics from a different life. Like they were written by someone who no longer existed. I should have confronted her. That's what people would expect, right? Demand the truth. Slam fists on the table. Ask why him? But the truth is, I don't think I ever wanted the answer. I was afraid it would confirm what I already suspected. That I had become invisible long before she ever stepped into that restaurant. By late afternoon, I found myself back at the house. Her car was gone. She'd left a note on the fridge. Meeting friends for dinner. Don't wait up. No name. No heart. Just 8 empty words scrawled in loopy handwriting. So I opened her drawer. The one she kept locked in her study. She always told me it had tax papers and boring legal stuff. But I knew better. I knew she was hiding pieces of a life that didn't include me anymore. I don't even know what I was hoping to find. Maybe evidence, maybe a reason, maybe a lie I could finally hold in my hand. What I found was worse. There were 3 printed photos tucked beneath a stack of receipts and old birthday cards. One of her in that green dress. One of them at a rooftop bar, his arm around her waist. And the last one, her head resting on his shoulder, eyes closed, lips just inches from his neck. Peaceful, intimate, intentionally secret. And there, in the corner of that last photo, was a date stamp. 3 weeks before our anniversary. So it hadn't been a mistake. It wasn't new. This wasn't something that just happened. It was a pattern, a second life. Something she chose over and over again while I sat at home thinking we were just in a rough patch. I put the photos back exactly as I found them. Locked the drawer. Sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the carpet. She would be home in a few hours. Probably with wine on her breath and lies on her tongue. But I wouldn't ask. I wouldn't beg. Because now I knew the truth. I wasn't part of her story anymore. I was just the footnote she never planned to read again. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. I laid in bed beside her, wide awake, listening to the rhythm of her breathing like it was a stranger's. She slept so soundly, like a person with no guilt, no secrets, no husband 3 feet away drowning in silence. I kept thinking about that photo, the way she looked at him, the way her body leaned into his like it was the most natural thing in the world, like she had done it 100 times before. And maybe she had, Maybe this had been going on for longer than I could imagine. The more I thought about it, the more I realized something terrifying. I didn't know this woman anymore. Not really. Somewhere between year 5 and year 10, she had turned into someone else. Someone I couldn't recognize. And maybe I had too. At sunrise, I got up without waking her. I needed air, needed to feel like the world was still real. I ended up at the same pier again, sitting on that same bench, gripping the same steering wheel, thoughts that led me nowhere. I looked out at the ocean and tried to remember the last time I felt truly happy. Not comfortable, not numb, but really honestly happy. Her face didn't come to mind. That's what broke me. When I got back, she was in the kitchen wearing my hoodie, making coffee like she hadn't kissed someone else just days ago. She turned and smiled. "Morning," she said, like we were just two normal people in a normal marriage. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her, ask her how she could pretend so well. But I didn't. I just nodded and poured a cup for myself. The silence between us screaming louder than anything I could have said. I watched her leave for work. Same routine. Same kiss on the cheek. But I noticed she didn't look me in the eye. That was new. Or maybe it wasn't, and I just never noticed before. Maybe I'd stopped looking back years ago. Later that afternoon, something in me cracked. I opened her laptop. I know I shouldn't have. I know that makes me know better. But I had to know how deep this went. I wish I could say I was surprised. But the truth was worse. I had been expecting it. Messages. Dozens of them. Some casual. Some intimate. Some just little nothings that couples send each other when they think no one else is watching. Except she wasn't single. She had a husband at home writing her anniversary letters while she was texting heart emojis to another man. His name was Jordan. Apparently, they met at some legal conference she went to for work. Their first message was nearly 8 months ago. 8 months. And here I was thinking we just needed a vacation or more date nights. Turns out she had already left me. She just hadn't packed yet. There was one message I read over and over again. Not because it was the most explicit or cruel, but because it was the most honest. She wrote, "I feel more like myself when I'm with you than I do at home." I don't know why, but that line hit harder than all the others. Because she was right. She wasn't herself around me anymore. Or maybe she was, and I just didn't want to admit who she'd become. And if she felt like a stranger around me, how long had I been one to her? I closed the laptop. Sat there for a long time in that stale, quiet house. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt small. Like I had spent the last decade building a life with someone who had quietly packed her bags in her heart long ago. When she walked in that night, I watched her closely. Every gesture, every word. She was trying. Or at least pretending to. She asked how my day was. Told me hers was nothing special. I nodded, trying not to show my hands were trembling under the table. She had no idea I knew. No idea the walls around her carefully constructed lies were already crumbling. And I didn't say a word, because I wasn't ready to end it yet. I needed one more moment, one more plan, one more quiet goodbye she'd never see coming. That Friday evening, we were invited to a small dinner at our friend's place, Nate and Carla, a couple we'd known since our early days of marriage. Normally, I would have declined. I didn't have the stomach to sit across from her in public and pretend we were fine. But something told me to go. I needed to see how far she'd go to keep up the act. I needed to watch her lie with her eyes, her hands, her smile, and see if anyone else could tell. She wore the same blue dress she wore on our 7th anniversary. The one she said made her feel like a woman out of a dream. She even curled her hair, added perfume. She looked beautiful, and I hated that I still noticed. In the car, she scrolled through her phone and occasionally glanced over to ask if I thought Nate would be grilling. I kept my responses short. 1 word. 2 at most. She didn't press. She just kept scrolling. The dinner was casual. Why? Laughter. Music playing low in the background. Nate talked about work. Carla showed off new photos of their baby niece. And Lorna? Lorna laughed. She told stories. She reached for my hand like it still meant something. She played the role of the wife everyone envied, the woman who made marriage look effortless. But I knew better now. Every word she spoke, every soft touch, it was all camouflage. At one point during dessert, Carla leaned in and said, "You two still look so in love. 10 years and still going strong. What's the secret?" Lorna laughed that light, practiced laugh and answered, "Never go to bed angry." Everyone chuckled. I smiled too, but something inside me broke in half. Because the night before, she went to bed with another man's name still warm on her fingertips. And I hadn't slept at all. We drove home in silence. She reached for the radio, played a song we both used to like. I didn't react. Halfway through, she turned it off and sighed. "You've been quiet lately," she said. I nodded. Just tired. That word again. Tired. We'd both been using it like a shield, pretending it covered everything. But tired wasn't the problem. Tired was the excuse we wrapped around the truth we didn't want to say out loud. Later that night, when she was in the shower, her phone lit up on the nightstand. One message, then another, then 3 more. I didn't need to look. I knew who it was. Jordan. I wondered if he knew she was lying to him too, that she was still sleeping in my bed, still holding my hand in public, still pretending to be someone she wasn't. She came back into the room with a towel in her hair, smiled at me, and crawled into bed like nothing was wrong. "Do you want to do something this weekend?" she asked. I looked at her and almost laughed. She had no idea I had already made plans. Because I wasn't waiting anymore. I had reserved a small cabin 2 hours out of town. Just one night, one last trip. A place with no signal, no neighbors, no distractions. She thought it was for us. A surprise. A rekindling of something. I let her believe that. I even let her pick out the wine. She had no idea I already packed her suitcase. No idea what I'd written in the letter she would find by the fire. No idea that the next time she looked for me, I wouldn't be there. Because I wasn't leaving with anger. I was leaving with silence. And that silence would echo louder than anything I could ever say. She was excited. I hadn't seen her genuinely excited in months. Not since before I found the messages. Before I stood in that restaurant watching her giggle over someone else's wine glass. She danced around the kitchen the morning of the trip, humming while tossing snacks into a tote bag like we were going on some spontaneous lover's getaway. She asked if we'd be hiking, if I packed marshmallows, if we should bring the board game we used to play when we couldn't sleep. I nodded, smiled even. I played the part of the doting husband one last time, and it was almost too easy. She had no idea this wasn't a trip to save anything. It was the burial ground for what we used to be. The cabin sat at the edge of a small lake surrounded by trees already tinged with autumn. No Wi-Fi, no cell signal, no distractions. Just nature and 1,000 quiet things waiting to be noticed. I had chosen it months ago when I still believed surprises could save us. Back when I thought all we needed was time away from the noise. But now, I realized the silence wasn't our cure. It was the thing that had been slowly killing us for years, and I was done pretending not to hear it. The first few hours passed in a blur of normalcy. We made coffee, unpacked, took a short walk along the lake. She held my hand, and I let her. I tried not to think about all the other places her hands had been. I didn't ask questions because I didn't want to hear the answers anymore. The truth was already heavy enough, and I was tired of carrying it alone. That night I lit a fire. We sat across from each other, her face glowing in the soft light like a memory I was about to erase. She sipped red wine and told me she was glad we came. She leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I missed this." I didn't respond. I just watched the flames dance and thought about the letter inside her overnight bag. It was tucked inside the side pocket. 5 pages. No drawings this time. No romantic flourishes. Just truth. The kind I had been too scared to speak out loud. I wrote everything. How I knew about Jordan. About the photos, the messages, the phone that lit up when she thought I wasn't looking. I told her I loved her once, fiercely, and for a long time. I told her she could keep the lies, but not me. I told her the man she used to know had quietly disappeared the night she kissed someone else while I waited with 2 glasses of wine and a letter I never should have written. She didn't know it yet, but I had left the ring on the windowsill by the bed. I had booked a ride from a nearby town the next morning. I would leave just after sunrise. No goodbye, no speech, just space, and the silence that she had carved between us returned to her in full. As she curled up next to me on the cabin couch, I watched the shadows flicker across her face. I didn't feel hate. I didn't even feel heartbreak anymore. I just felt the strange, cold peace that comes when you stop hoping for things to return to how they were. Sometimes, the most painful part isn't when love dies. It's when you realize it's been dead for a long time and you were the only one keeping the lights on. Before we went to sleep, she turned to me and said, "I'm glad we're trying again." And I whispered, "Me too," because sometimes the final act of love is letting them believe the illusion for one more night. The fire had died down by the time I opened my eyes. It was still dark, maybe just past 5. I didn't use an alarm. I didn't need one. My mind had been rehearsing this moment all night, like muscle memory for heartbreak. The room was cold, the kind of cold that doesn't ask permission, it just moves in. She was still asleep, buried under the blanket we used to share. One hand tucked under her cheek, the other resting on the pillow where my head used to be. I stood over her for a long moment, memorizing that stillness. I knew that when she woke up, everything would be different. Not loud, not violent, just final. I didn't leave a note on the counter or a voicemail on her phone. I didn't stage anything for effect. The only thing I left was the truth, quietly folded in the bag she'd packed with such excitement 2 days ago. 5 pages. Clean, plain handwriting. "No, I hope we can talk. No, maybe one day." Just a full stop. My ride arrived just as the sky began to shift from black to pale gray. The driver didn't ask questions. He saw the cabin in the rearview mirror and maybe understood. Or maybe I just looked like someone who needed to disappear. We drove in silence, the road curling through the trees like a ribbon of escape. With every mile, I felt something in my chest loosen. Not joy, not relief, but something close to breath. I checked into a small motel in the next town. Not because I had nowhere to go, but because I needed to be nowhere for just a little while. The room was bland. Beige curtains, humming mini fridge, TV bolted to the wall. It was perfect. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat on the bed with my shoes still on, staring at my phone. 2 missed calls. 1 voicemail. Then 3 messages. Then silence. For the rest of the day, I did nothing. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just existed in that hollow space between choice and consequence. At one point, I listened to the voicemail. Her voice was small, confused. "Elliot? Where are you? Did you go into town? You didn't say anything. Call me, please." She still didn't know. And that's what got me. That even after everything. After the affair, the lies, the months of slow-motion detachment. She still hadn't considered the possibility that I would leave. I had let myself become so invisible to her that my absence felt like a logistical error, not an emotional one. Around dusk, she sent one more message. "Please tell me you're okay. I don't understand what's happening." I didn't reply. I stared at the screen until it dimmed and went black, taking her words with it. That was the cruelest truth of all, I think. Not that she betrayed me, not that she chose someone else, but that she thought I would always stay. That no matter how far she drifted, I'd still be there on the shore, waving her back in. But not this time. That night, I lay on the motel bed in the dark, listening to the ticking of the wall clock. I thought about the first time I kissed her, the first road trip, the first "I love you." And then I thought about the last time she touched me and meant it. I couldn't remember when that was. Maybe that's when I started leaving, long before the cabin, long before the silence. Maybe this had been happening in quiet fragments, one forgotten moment at a time. When I finally closed my eyes, I didn't dream. And for the first time in years, the silence didn't hurt. 3 days passed before she stopped calling. A full week before the silence between us became something permanent. I didn't block her. I didn't erase her name from my phone. I just let the distance grow, one unread message at a time. There was power in doing nothing. I had spent years chasing answers, trying to fix cracks that were never mine to fill. But now, finally, I had stepped out of the cycle. I wasn't begging to be seen anymore. I had become invisible on my own terms. Then one night, a week and a half after I left the cabin, I received a single text. No paragraphs. No excuses. Just, "I read your letter." That was all it said. No punctuation. No follow-up. But for some reason, it felt like enough. Maybe for the first time in our marriage, she was speechless because the truth had landed exactly where it needed to. She had been caught not by confrontation or rage, but by honesty. A quiet, detailed record of everything she thought I hadn't noticed. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. I moved into a small apartment a few towns over. Nothing fancy. Just one bedroom, second floor, a creaky balcony with chipped paint, and a view of the corner laundromat. And yet, I found peace there. I bought fresh sheets, made my own meals, played old records at night. There were still bad days, sure. I'd see something on a walk, a certain dress, a gesture, a laugh, and feel that tightness in my chest again. But it never stayed long. The pain didn't haunt me anymore. It simply passed through. One afternoon, while walking past a local bookstore, I saw a couple laughing over coffee. Their chairs were too close, hands intertwined under the table. It looked easy, free. I didn't feel bitter. I felt hopeful, because I realized something. Even after everything, even after being lied to, neglected, forgotten, I still believed in love. Just not the kind that has to be begged for. Not the kind that leaves you writing letters to ghosts while someone else holds your place. Months later, I got a card in the mail. No return address, just my name. Inside was a single sentence in her handwriting. "I never expected you to leave, but I understand now why you had to." I folded it once, placed it in the back of my drawer, and closed it. Not out of anger, but closure. Because here's what I learned. Sometimes love ends not with a bang, but with a whisper. And sometimes walking away is not the moment you give up. It's the moment you begin again. Thank you for following this journey on Reddit Confessions. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved without saying a word? Or left a letter that changed everything? Tell us in the comments. We want to hear your story. And don't forget to subscribe for more true confessions just like this one.